Hi, I'm Daniel from Image Salon, and this is Editing Deconstructed. Every week, we take a different image and show you some behind the scenes in Lightroom and Photoshop to get the best out of your editing. In this week's video, we're going to be looking at a portrait we took in the middle of the day in Montreal, Jessica and Jeremy's wedding a couple of years ago. This is downtown Montreal on a bright sunny day, very hot. We were trying to keep the couple in the shade as much as possible. Although where we were doing portraits, there was a lot of graphic lines, very interesting buildings. And so we wanted to create an image where we could really use the architecture and really make things stand out. And this is where editing is really important to master, because I find that it affects the way that we shoot as well. And here, knowing exactly what we could do in post-production definitely helped us achieve the right results that we needed in camera as well. So let's go ahead into Photoshop. We're going to start by giving it more contrast. Our highlights here, instead of pulling them like we normally do, we're going to push them because we want the ground to stand out a little bit more. We're going to pull our blacks, try clarity, but because of the edge of the sky against the building, clarity is really not going to be the best tool here. So we're going to keep it at 0. Dehaze goes up to add a bit of contrast. We can push our vibrance, push our saturation as well to get a little bit more color. In our HSL settings, we're going to kill the saturation on the oranges and the yellows. That's going to make this ground really, really neutral. It's also doing bad things for the couple's skin, but we're going to get them back in a different layer, so it's not important at this stage. You'll notice I also pulled the luminance down on the blues to get a little bit deeper blues in the sky. We set our classic sharpening and noise reduction values. Give it a little bit of an S-curve. By the way, I am aware that we can save these settings as a preset and have them load automatically on a per image basis. I just do them on each individual image in these videos in case anybody comes in, hasn't seen the other videos yet, and wants to know what our settings are. All right, next we're in our transform tool, and I'm just picking some lines that I know need to be straight. I'm using the guided upright tool to make the architecture really nice and straight. Things are slightly off balance, so we will be cropping the image a little bit later after we adjust our other settings. So I'm just playing around with the tint and the temperature, trying to get things as optimal as possible. And what I'm really looking at is the ground, the darkness of the building, and the blue sky. That's really going to be my first layer. So I'm pulling the shadows down to really kill any kind of detail that's visible in the building. All right, let's go ahead and crop the image. There's just a little balance issue. First of all, on the left side, we were getting a little too much building. That was not so interesting. And then on the right side, things are a little bit too loose. Final adjustments to the HSLs. And once we're good, we're going to send the image into Photoshop. So that's going to be our first layer. Let's go ahead and send it back to camera raw. By the way, I'm ignoring the part of the building that's still visible there. I'm not going to create an extra layer just for that. We will burn it differently afterwards. So now we're going to start lifting our blacks a little bit, bring our exposure up a little bit. I want to start seeing the couple. I don't need a good exposure on on the entire subject, but we definitely want to start brushing them in a little bit. Bring back our yellow and orange saturation so that their skin tone is the right temperature, or rather the right coloring. We can give it a little bit of clarity at this point, since we're not going to be touching the sky in this layer, and we'll adjust our temperature so that they have a nice skin tone. Once that's loaded into Photoshop, we apply a black mask, take a white brush, low opacity or flow, usually around 10%, and really start brushing in our subjects. And we're starting to see some of the detail come through, both to the right of the bride and through her veil, and we'll try to address that afterwards. Actually, let's go ahead and try to mask off, especially where the ground is. In the veil, it's definitely going to be a little trickier. Let's give it a try, but it's probably going to look a little unnatural. We'll do it around the groom's legs as well. And yeah, the way that it looks in the bride's veil doesn't look very natural. So let's go ahead and remove it. We'll blend it in later on. We'll do the heads and the faces as much as possible, but we're going to need a new layer for those. Send the new layer back into Camera Raw, bring our exposure up even a little bit more, push our shadows to get a little bit more detail. And you can see how this is the right exposure for the bride and groom, but definitely not the right exposure on the rest of the image. So now with our brighter layer, we apply the layer mask and then brush in just their heads, their hands, and really get things where we want them to be so that our eye goes to the subject and nowhere else in the photo. The heads are against a black background, therefore it makes it a lot easier to brush in. It's not picking up any highlight details on the ground. We're going to brush in a little bit more of our dress, a little bit more of the veil, really make sure that they stand out, including the edges of the veil, especially where it's against the darkness of the back. All right, let's fix that slight balance issue. Basically what I'm looking at is the space between the building on the left and the edge of the frame, and I want that space to be equal to the bride to the edge of the space. So left side and right side, that's where we really want that balance. All right, now that we have all of our layering done, let's go ahead and make any kind of final tweaks and adjustments that are needed. We're going to do everything on a separate layer just in case we make a mistake and we need to go back. So start by spot healing some of the little spots on the ground. I'm going to take my burn tool in Photoshop, set it to shadows at 20%. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to burn only the shadows. So areas that are already dark are going to become even darker. And it allows me to use a sloppier brush because I know that it's not going to affect my highlights so much. So as I click inside of the veil, only the darker parts of the veil are going to get darker. So this is where I can blend in different parts of the veil. And as you can see, it's still not blending in perfectly. So we'll come back to it in a little bit. Let's go ahead and fix this building. So I'm going to give it a few clicks. I'm burning my shadows and also likely the midtones. Let's see what it does just on the shadows. Erase that line. I really just want to see the outline of the building. My burning is spilling into the sky a little bit. So we will mask that off in a second. So let's add a mask. We're going to take our straight edge lasso tool. My apologies if it has a more technical name that I'm forgetting right now. We'll go around the building, trace the edges as far as we need. Right around there should be good, and then loop things back to where we started. And then simply fill this in with a black mask, and that should get rid of the burning that we did on the sky. You can see before and after right there. Last few things to fix. Let's see. So the groom's ear, kind of glowing a little bit. The highlights are coming out a little bit too much. So again, I'm going to take a clone stamp, set it to darken mode. And all I'm doing is taking slightly darker skin tones under his ear and stamping them into the ear itself. When it's in darken mode, it's only going to darken pixels that are darker than the brighter ones. Final little adjustments, we're really going to increase the contrast. Things were looking a little bit too flat. Now they really stand out. The whites are nice and crisp. The blacks are nice and crisp. Everything's looking very good. It's graphic exactly as we envisioned it. And then let's go in and try to fix that veil. We're going to try with the clone stamp tool. It's going to be a little tricky. It's a very small area, but we want to preserve the texture. And things don't need to be perfect. I think just removing the line that we see going through her veil is what we want to achieve. So just give it a few clicks. We're doing it now with the brush. Just very, very softly, very low opacity, just to blend things in. And that's it. The image is looking great. Flatten everything and save it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Editing Deconstructed.